I'm Rick Brooks, and this is Rick's Mind. Today with me, I have guest Sara Seager, who is a professor of planetary sciences at MIT. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm always excited to talk to people that are vastly more intelligent than I am. And so this is a real delight to have you on the show. And what really struck, why we reached out is you wrote a paper on the possibility, you have a hypothesis that there could be life on Venus. And I kind of want to get into that because that's right in our backyard. And I guess what makes you think that is probably my first question.
Well, maybe to start out, we could just give everyone, a bit of background about Venus. It's so bright in the night sky. If you ever have a chance, it's not always there, but when it is, it's pretty much the brightest object in our night sky. Now, Venus, it's a crazy place for life because it's so hot. If you remember ever learning about it in school or reading about it, this planet, Venus, is incredible. It has a massive carbon dioxide greenhouse atmosphere, and the surface is so hot, no life of any kind could survive. But what is amazing about Venus, and by the way, this goes back like half a century. It's just like, how on Earth, I don't know if you ever hike. Do you ever hike up? Go
all the time.
Oh, yeah, you do?
All the time. I'm an avid hiker. I'm out here in the Pacific Northwest.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're in the Northwest? That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm out here in Portland.
Oh my gosh. You know, it gets colder as you go up. Well,
yes.
It can get very cold very quickly. Well, on Venus, the same thing is true. So far above the surface, it gets cooler and cooler until there's a layer in the atmosphere, high in the clouds, 50 kilometers above the surface, where the temperature is actually just right for life.
That's astounding.
It is.
Yeah.
And you know what's even more astounding? So this idea has been around for over half a century that there's some kind of life, that there could be maybe microbes, like tiny, bacteria type life floating around in the clouds. Because here on our planet Earth, we have life in our clouds as well.
Actually, I did not know that at all. What kind of life do we have in our clouds?
We have bacteria they're temporarily swept up from the surface, and they hang out in the clouds maybe for up to a week. They can be moved across continents and drop back down. But unlike on Earth, well, it's pretty cloudy, I think. Well, I don't know if it's cloudy where you are, but I always think of the Northwest. Maybe that's just the coast. It's being really rainy.
No, you're right. You're 100%. It's a terrible place. Don't come here. No.
Okay. But there are, here on Earth, so we could say that, or you could say, go to the desert if you want clear skies. Well, on Venus, it's always cloudy. The clouds are always there, and they're very extensive. They are 20 kilometers deep, and they're always there. So there's this concept that there could be life just floating around in the clouds, borrowing from Earth and just thinking about the temperature and everything. So that's kind of where it starts.
That's fun. Wasn't there a mission or some sort of probe sent to Venus in the 70s? And I don't know how long it transmitted. This is really reaching back in the deep recesses
that's great.
of my
I'm glad
mind.
you know about this, because there was a heyday for Venus in the 1970s. The Russians sent many probes to Venus. They dropped probe after probe. NASA sent a probe. It actually made four. It split into four, kind of. It dropped four separate things. Mm-hmm. And the Russians even sent two balloons to Venus.
Yes. I didn't know about the balloons, but I know that Russia has always been very into Venus. And how would we, in the future, go about collecting, getting some sort of craft into the clouds? Is that something that's being talked about?
It really is, actually. Yeah. So let's go back a bit, though. So one of the things back in this, the Russians and some of the data from NASA, some of this data showed unusual gases, things that didn't make sense. And I don't know if this happens in what you folks do, but sometimes things are just so confusing, they get shelved.
Yes.
There's no great explanation, and it's sort of just ignored. Well, it turns out that some of these gases, they just don't belong. And, we love the concept that just like on Earth, people and cows and microbes and plants are putting off gases, that there may be this life, maybe there is life in the atmosphere, and it's putting off these gases that we can't explain any other way. So it's kind of this, I hesitate to say crazy theory or crazy idea. It's not considered mainstream in any way, but that's kind of more of the evidence. There's some unusual things happening, some gases, there's some unusual There's unusual patterns on Venus if you look at it in the ultraviolet. And, people do like the idea that it leaves room for the possibility of life.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm team alien.
Okay.
If you
It's not
listen,
like most scientists. It's great talking to you because the scientists would be like, no, need proof,
yeah.
need evidence. They're not as supportive.
Oh, I'm going to be honest with you. You're talking to like I am so team alien that mathematically there has to be life out there, and my problem is like I want to believe, so there's just an automatic. Yeah, that's probably right. There's definitely life out there. So I'm 100% on board with this idea. I would love to. Hopefully, we can get some sort of studies and people to look into this more seriously. I think that we're missing a lot of pieces of the puzzle because there is such a vehement no, there can't be life out there. I don't understand why we don't have an open mind about these things and really look into them more seriously. It's kind of the tragedy of academia, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love what you've said. I do. Yeah. Well, let's take this a little further. So this might shed light on it a bit more. So despite those temperatures being good in the atmosphere of Venus, in the clouds, these clouds are nasty. Okay. They're not made of water like our clouds. The water droplets, very friendly. They're made of sulfuric acid, concentrated sulfuric acid, which you wouldn't want to drop that on your skin. It would literally burn your skin. If you, for whatever reason, you wouldn't do this, but if you were to put an ant in concentrated sulfuric acid, which I can tell you why I know about this, but it would actually, what happens? It has an immediate seizure and then liquefies.
Oh, wow.
It's not pretty.
Did you run this experiment?
Well, what happened was during COVID, how there were no summer jobs for kids, no camps, nothing to do. Mm-hmm. I had my one son, I think he was either 16 or 17, work for one of my colleagues who works on Venus. Mm-hmm. And after he got the job done, which was a database research of what materials can withstand sulfuric acid. Because when you're thinking of building your spacecraft and it's going to go in the atmosphere, it has to not get damaged. Yeah. Well, he also pushed to do real experiments. And so we ordered some sulfuric acid and we did these outdoors, of course. And it was a great way to, when there wasn't anything else to do. But then he just took stuff from the environment to see what happened to it.
Yeah.
But he discovered something really awesome. And a lot of this is already known, but it's the joy of discovery that is just so thrilling. He took this leaf. We have this plant. It's called, I think it's a rhododendron, and it's got a really waxy leaf.
Yeah.
And that actually, believe it or not, it took a while. That one didn't react to sulfuric acid. The wax protected it.
Fast. Yeah. That would not have expected that at all.
And we tried other stuff like graphene, like pencil lead, graphite. Yeah. And we ordered a bunch of stuff as well, like rock material and other things, such as pure sulfur. It's this yellow material. But what is amazing about that wax is imagine if there was some kind of life and it managed to make a shell around it, part of its, survival strategy. Yeah, it's inside the droplet, or maybe it's floating around, and it can make a material because there are things that are resistant to it.
Oh, 100%. It would be interesting because we have life on Earth, I think it's a tardigrade that can survive the vacuum of space and all sorts of things. Right. And so it's not that there are things on this planet right now, little microbes, bacteria that can survive extreme conditions. There's things at the bottom of, the geysers and stuff that we're finding. So It would be, second question, were you able to find any material that is able to deal with sulfuric acid?
Well, there's materials, but no life.
Yeah.
So what I love about this conversation, it's you're like a scientist, the way you're thinking through this and gathering the info. And, there's always a back and forth. So that's a really great question because there's no life on Earth that could survive in sulfuric acid. That's kind of the bottom line. So any life there has to be different from anything we can conceive of right now. It has to have a different, biochemistry. It has to have different building blocks.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a carbon-based life form per se, correct? Am I thinking along
it might
the right
be carbon.
line?
It might be carbon-based, but it would just have to have materials that are arranged differently than our, DNA, for example.
Okay.
There's no answer. I couldn't even answer your question. Like, I couldn't say what it is
Well, it'd be
or
alien.
what it has to be. Yeah, it would be alien. It would be alien.
Would be alien. It'd be alien to everything. It would be super, man. But as far as like materials, right? If we were going to create a ship or some sort of balloon or something to gather to, I don't know, the only word that pops in my head is like rake these clouds. Like, what do we have anything that we've come up with in order to do this?
We do, because remember, we've been there before.
Yes.
And the Russians had the balloon that lasted 2 days.
Oh, I didn't know it lasted 2 days.
It lasted a long time.
Okay. I thought
and you know
one
why?
of them... Go ahead.
What happened was it could only last as long as its batteries could. You know, it's the same kind of problem we have every day.
Yeah.
So they just sent it with batteries. And when the batteries were out, that was kind of the end. But they coated the balloon with Teflon, you know, like in your frying pan.
Yeah.
Non-stick. Yeah. So there's lots of materials. That was what the job assigned to my son I was talking to you about, was just to, go to the various existing databases that are out there and, collect a list of materials that are resistant.
Okay. All right. So we've got the technology. We've made plenty advancements in batteries. So now we just got to get the funding, and we got to go to Venus. We have to figure this out. I don't know.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Do we know? Is there anything slated?
Well, there's a lot going on with Venus, but let's go back to one more piece of the story, okay? This Perfect. You're going to love, okay?
Oh, I'm excited.
So I do work, mostly I work on exoplanets, planets that orbit stars other than the sun. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole holy grail of trying to find signs of life by way of gases that don't belong. Mm-hmm. And my team was working on this one gas. It's going to sound really obscure. But it's called phosphine.
Okay.
So it's just, you probably never heard of it. It's not something that's really like in your everyday kind of toolkit.
Yeah, never heard of that.
But actually it's kind of, so we were working on phosphine, and then was just absolutely amazing because, you haven't heard of it. Most people haven't heard of it. There was another scientist. Her name's Professor Jane Greaves. Mm-hmm. She was also working on phosphine as a possible gas produced by life. But she purposely set out to search for signs of life on Venus by searching for phosphine gas using telescopes here on Earth.
Okay.
So this is pretty out there, actually, just the idea that you would even spend time or resources doing this. But someone connected our two teams because we were both working on phosphine. And Professor Jane Greaves is actually a radio astronomer. She uses radio telescopes to study just objects far away. And she's from the UK. So we teamed up, and after a number of years, Jane was leading this project, and we reported a discovery of this gas, phosphine, on Venus.
Okay.
And now this actually is really important because on Earth, phosphine is only associated with life. With bacteria in oxygen-free environments like wetlands, it's associated with animal guts like feces, like penguin poop. Over penguin colonies, there's lots of phosphine, it turns out. So we found this really unusual gas, and the team thought about every possible way you could make phosphine, like volcanoes, lightnings, meteors that hit the atmosphere and evaporate, and every way you could imagine, and wrote 100-page paper on all this and said, wow, if there's truly phosphine on Venus, it's either unknown chemistry that we don't know, or it leaves the room for the possibility of life.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that was not the reaction of most other scientists. People got we made a big announcement in September 2020. And this was an incredible time because Venus had been largely ignored at some level, since the missions we talked about in the 1970s and 80s.
Yeah. And this is fucking crazy. I did not really know. Crazy, yeah, you'll have to send me this paper after. Just email it to me if you can. I don't know if you can, but I would love to read that. Yeah.
What's even more jaw-dropping is that after that, this result was seriously attacked in many ways. And in science, there's a healthy back and forth, right? We'll say we found phosphine, and then you could get the data because the data is all public. And if you had, the right skill, which some people do, people analyze the data on their own, and some other teams didn't find the signal in the data. It's literally looking for a needle in a haystack. Mm-hmm. And some teams did find the signal. So there's right now this kind of big controversy where the team I'm involved with, led by Professor Jane Greaves, stands by our detection that there is phosphine. Some other teams look at the same data and say there's no phosphine, and some other teams look and say there is a signal. So there's like a giant kind of argument kind of playing out here about phosphine.
There's three. So is the signal of phosphine, could you find it? Could you, replicate it? Could you see it right now if we were to go and look, or is it something that pops up and then disappears? Because if you, there are people that have, minor astronomers, and NASA, I believe, has documented that there's been green light. Buzz Aldrin saw green light as he descended to the moon landing. So there are weird anomalies that happen that we have documented in space. So I don't see why there's a lot of back and forth, and who knows if it's bacteria, maybe it's blooming or something like that. In that case, I'm always going to lean to you.
Right. Well, part of this is that it is like the same data set. So it's like as if you went out and took a picture of something, but you had to, change the contrast. I don't know if you ever do that, but like you play around with the brightness change or things like that. It's kind of similar to that idea. And so, they use the same data and don't see it. So it's kind of different from looking now or looking next year or last year. But what I wanted to say about this is that it's like literally shone a light on Venus. Like it brought Venus back from like being some boring dead planet to being like, wow, we should care about Venus again.
Yeah.
People have always been working on Venus, but this just drew like a lot of attention to this planet.
Yeah. And Venus is it's a very interesting, but doesn't it have, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't it have like lakes of like, no, it's not liquid nitrogen. You're
thinking about Titan. Titan is one of Saturn's moons. Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's why it occupies the same part of your brain? Because it's exotic and just wild. And so Titan is very far, it's very cold, and it literally, it has liquid methane and ethane, like kind of like gasoline, like lakes. It's bizarre.
It is super bizarre. Europa is also something that I went through a deep obsession with Europa, because they think that if we were able to drill down, that there would be an ocean underneath ice. And I'm like, there's probably life there too. Who knows? Like there potentially could be life in our, and then, another problem I have is like I'll get obsessed with like Kepler 22b or Kepler 16b, and then I find out how far away they are. Like, we're never going to be able to go there. And I just it's a depressing. I get so hopeful, but we don't have the technology as of yet to get these massive distances away. Like my brain can't even comprehend how far away these things really are. But I just know that is it Kepler 16b where it's circling a dwarf star, and so part of the planet is in sun and the other half is always in darkness. Am I right there?
Yeah, it's not Kepler 16 per se, but there's you can't remember all. There's literally like thousands and thousands of planets. So, but yes, there are planets like you describe and many more crazy types out there.
Yeah, absolutely. What's up, John?
Yeah.
So I did look up. So the Kepler system is it's a binary system. It's I'm not sure what the larger star is, but the smaller star is a red dwarf. So you might be thinking of that system, but like Dr. Seager said, there's a lot of planets and stuff. So
thank you. Yeah, I get. There are so many. We've kind of stopped naming planets now. It's like K2 or and
I wish we could let people name them. Wouldn't that be so cool if they said, Rick, we want you to name this particular planet? That would be so awesome. It would be
Rickatron or Rictimus Prime. Something like that. It would be ridiculous. But I wish that too. If I was a minor astronomer, or just I did it as a hobby and I was able to discover something, I'm sure they'd let me name it, right?
Well, oddly enough, no for planets. But asteroids, you can get an asteroid named after you. I actually have an asteroid named after me.
Ooh, you do? How do I go about getting an asteroid named after me?
I'm not exactly sure how it happens, but it's a lot of asteroids are named after a lot of people. And you just want to make sure that it's the one that gets named after you isn't that killer asteroid that ends up hitting the Earth. Wouldn't that be bad if the Ricatron asteroid ends up being the one that we have to try to nudge away or like save the planet to get rid of it.
They wouldn't be able to stop it. No, I'm just kidding. No, that is cool though. I want now. I'm going to look into that after this show. Definitely see if one is already named after me, or if I'll probably have to pay some money. So who knows if I'll do it? But yeah, back to Venus. Have you always been interested in Venus? Is this something that has just kind of developed recently?
It's just kind of developed because I've been working, like you, like it's like you just summarized it. I work on exoplanets, but they're so far away. And we're getting to the point where we're going to get great data with the new telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope that launched recently. But Venus is just so close to home. And until this whole phosphine thing, I really wasn't paying attention to Venus.
Yeah. And that's in is James Webb Telescope, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. That just launched, and that's heading to the TESS system.
Well, this James Webb Space Telescope, by the way, it launched on Christmas morning. So I'm not sure, you were probably sleeping because it was in Pacific time, like 4:20 a.m.
Oh, I was definitely asleep. Fast asleep. Okay.
I actually was on the West Coast, and we woke up to watch the launch, and it launched from South America, but it was the most beautiful. This telescope has been 30 years in the making, and it's like the next Hubble, basically.
Oh,
and this telescope,
really?
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's an incredible testament to the human ability to build amazing capabilities for space. And this telescope, by the way, it's going really far from Earth, because Hubble, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Hubble orbits Earth.
Okay, yeah.
And it orbits every 90 minutes. So it goes through night and day, night, day. Mm-hmm. And that's not really good for astronomy, because I'm guessing you don't have to do this. You look like a super strong guy, but people like me, when you open the jar, you don't have this, but if you try to open a jar and you can't open it, you run it under hot water.
Okay.
No, you don't know about this. Okay,
no,
this is what
I
you
did.
do. So,
I don't know.
Okay, so if I have a jar of a glass jar with a metal top, so I have these artichoke hearts, I get them in this glass jar. It's like a Costco thing.
Okay,
or if you have peanut butter, I get this really nice peanut butter. It's in a glass jar. If you can't open it, you run it under hot water. I'm sure some of the listeners will know what this is. And the metal cap expands the tiniest amount. So after you ran it under hot water, the metal expanded, but the glass didn't. So then you can open the jar.
I actually did not know this. You
guys are making me laugh because you're just so strong. You never had to think about this.
I knew this. I have a small wife though, so I'll take credit for that part.
Okay. All right. So you have to know about that, because Hubble, think about this for a moment. It goes through night and day every 90 minutes because it's orbiting Earth quite, quickly.
Yes.
But imagine that, some metal parts are expanding a tiny amount every time it goes in the sunlight.
Oh.
And then when it cools down again, some of those parts are shrinking.
Okay.
But the whole telescope isn't doing that. Just like the glass jar, it's made of different things. So imagine it going out of focus a tiny bit, or just something changing that's not really good for very, very careful measurements.
Yeah, that's going to skew the data. I didn't think it would matter all that much, right?
Well, usually it doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Usually it doesn't matter. But for exoplanets, when we're trying to study their atmospheres and look for gases, that's making a very precise measurement. It would be like measuring your table to many decimal places. Yeah. You might measure your table and say, my table's 3 feet. But you wouldn't say my table is 3.0001 feet. Yeah. But if you want to make a measurement like that, then it matters, actually.
Yes, it would. Because one of in the search, when you're monitoring atmospheres, if you're looking for intelligent life, you're looking for lights, right? If they have cities, are they emitting gases like we are? So, I'm now jacked about the James Webb. How far out is that thing going?
Well, it's going 1 million miles away from Earth. Actually, it's there. It already got there. It just got there the other day, actually.
Oh, really? So now they're going to start imaging stuff.
Yeah, well, it's going to take a while. The analogy I like to give is that it's imagine that someone who's in a coma. You don't wake them up and say, hey, let's run the Boston Marathon. You sort of slowly wake them up and you test that their arms are working, or check that they're able to speak. So with the Webb, it's literally going to take a few months before it's ready to do its job, turning things on, turning things off, making sure it's all working. So even though it's already reached its destination, it'll still be a few months before it's ready to roll.
Okay, and it's just going to be. Do you know where it's going to be, like searching, or like I thought it was a TAPA system, but I'm not sure. I didn't look that up.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. So, but it's at this special. So it's going to be looking in various different parts of the sky. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I mean it's like a competitive process. So if you had an idea, let's say you wanted to look at one of the planets you mentioned, like Kepler 22b, you would write a proposal, maybe get a team together and propose, and then a committee of like peers reviews the proposals. And it's not necessarily always fair, but chooses the top ranked ones, and those eventually get scheduled for telescope time. And then the telescope will monitor your object, and eventually the data will come back to you, and you'll analyze that data and see what's in that planet atmosphere.
Oh, I had no idea how this is how it all. I mean, I'm so new to all of this. Like, I thought it was just taking a snapshot of everything. I didn't know that you had to write proposals, and then it would just hone in on one planet for, I don't know, let's say a few days, and then it would send the data back, and you would eventually get that. I literally thought, for some reason, this is how ignorant I am of this whole process, that it was just, all right, taking a snapshot. We're going to look over here. We're going to look over there. I didn't know. So
you have to be really careful too. Like, you wouldn't want to point that telescope even at Venus or the sun. It's like you wouldn't look at the sun with your eyes because, you know that you'll be blinded. So also you have to be careful, not to point it where it shouldn't go. And also that whatever observation you're going to take, will register. Like, if you can take a picture with your phone, if it's too dark out, like nothing will register. So there's sort of a lot of different considerations that have to go into how this telescope will be used.
I did not know that. I do have another. Are you, we've had Dr. Avi Loeb on the podcast. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, in fact, I know Avi Loeb when I was a graduate student, when I was first learning. I was a graduate student at Harvard, and he was a brand new professor there. This is a long time ago. And then over time, he's kind of even an extended family friend. He lives in the next town over. I don't see him very often, but he's someone in my sphere. Let's put it that way.
That's awesome. What did you think about his theory on Oumuamua?
Well, I should ask you, what was your conclusion after you interviewed him?
100% think that it was an alien spacecraft. 100%. I've had professors on this show that disagreed. They think it was a piece of ice, but I'm like, either way, like, that's something that's never, you're proposing something that's just as preposterous that we've never seen before. So, I mean, it's that weird thing. I mean, I'm just kind of a dumb guy. That
actually you're not. You're definitely not. So.
But mathematics.
You got to stop calling yourself stupid. You're really not stupid.
Okay. Oh, I'm not a doctor, right?
You're not a specialist in it. You haven't devoted your life to studying it. So
100%. But
you're just trying to work through the logic. That's all.
Exactly. And I don't understand, like, when we just first started this podcast out, we used to ask people if they believed in Bigfoot, and I don't really anymore, but like, it was a fun thing. But life to me is a lot more fun believing that there are extraterrestrials. Like, and if the math works out, right? So why wouldn't you?
Right.
Like, I'm not afraid.
The thing is, okay, so in science, we're really, really particular. And we really want to have like cold, hard evidence before we say anything. So if you did ask what I think about it. I liked what you said a lot. And then I just kind of end there. I'm like, we don't have enough data on Oumuamua to say like concretely, definitively what it is.
Yes.
But I like the way that you said it and that Avi Loeb says it, that let's consider a few possibilities, right? Like, it could be an alien spaceship, or it could be a new type of thing we've never heard of before. That is pretty crazy too, like a hydrogen iceberg.
Exactly.
So for me, I'm good leaving it there. Like, I don't feel like I have to say it's one or the other. It's sort of this weird thing in science. You just have to get used to living with this indefinite uncertainty. I don't know if you'd be good with that.
No, I don't know if I would be, but now that we're talking about definite uncertainty, what other weird things in the space world that are bizarre that I might not know about and you do, that you would like to share? I would be very curious. Think of the craziest things. We've talked about the phosphine gas, And I think that's, and I may have mispronounced that, but we've talked about that. I think that's really sweet, and I can't wait to get those papers on it. But what else? There's got to be more things. You still there?
Yeah, you're just going in and out a bit, so I'm sure it'll pass.
Okay. Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of latency. John, how is it looking on your end?
Everything looks good here. You guys go ahead.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I can't seem to think of anything off the top of my head, but there's nothing right now that I can think of, but I'd have to kind of go away and give that one a bit of thought. Like in the past, there are these things in outer space called gamma ray bursts, like big bursts of energy at very, very high energies. And for quite a while, people didn't know, is this like a kind of, significant explosion nearby, like in our own galaxy, somewhere pretty close? Or is it like the biggest explosion we could ever imagine that's really, really far away?
Yeah. Oh,
and no one attributed that to aliens, but there are a lot of puzzles like that eventually do get resolved because we get more information. Yeah. And so for Muamua, I can never say it right.
Muamua.
Oh, Muamua, you got that.
Yeah. It took me a while too.
Yeah, I bet. For that one, we may not know any more about that particular object, but if there's one, there's usually more.
Yes.
And so, we may be better prepared next time that if we see something else like that moving super fast through our, nearby to us, that we can, put some telescopes on it sooner. Some people want to have like a little spacecraft in outer space ready to move to go visit it up close. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we'll have more data later, not on that same object, but on different ones.
Yes, absolutely. I just purchased a book. This is how out there I am about the Dogon people, and it's I think it's called The Great Question. Are you familiar with the Dogon people?
You'd have to remind me. I've definitely heard of them, but
they're a tribal society in I want to say like sub-Saharan Africa, around the Sudan area. That they had access to, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, they had access to they had advanced mathematics, and they had they figured out a star, Sirius B, before science did, and they knew where it was in the sky. And people are like, how did you figure this out? And they're like, part of their mythology is we were visited by aliens, and that's how we figured this out. And they said it was 4,000 years ago. So I'm always picking up, and it's pseudoscience for sure, but God damn it, it's entertaining. John, go ahead.
So you were right. It's sub-Saharan, but they're in Mali. So
okay, man, I'm on fire today. I'm like, I'm bad. I'm going to say 60% correct. But yeah, sorry. Is that something that you've heard about?
I have. Now that you mentioned it, I have. Yes, I've heard of that. And I'm like good with just living with not knowing. Like maybe they did know about Sirius B. That would have been fantastic. And I don't know how. Maybe they had, ability to measure things precisely in the sky. Maybe it was just a good guess. I don't know what it was, but I think it's awesome.
Or they were visited.
Okay.
4,000 years ago. Who knows? Maybe. We weren't around.
I mean, there's a lot of people who support that theory. I mean, there's the ancient alien theory. People love that theory for the pyramids and for other things.
I'm in college. That definitely was a favorite pastime of me and my friends. We would allegedly maybe smoke something and watch that show and just be like, "What's going on?" But
I can tell you a bit about that show. Actually, did you know I used to be on that show?
No way.
Yeah.
I did not know. What
tell you that. So I was called to ask if I would be on the pilot of this show. Mm-hmm. And they were interviewing maybe like 7 people for the theory and 7 people against the theory. You
were against it.
So yeah, I go on this show. I think I even went to like New York City because they were, I usually don't travel for this kind of thing, but I was pretty intrigued by the story. So I go, and it was just the people making that first pilot were just incredible. Like they asked great questions and they were just so good at speaking. So time goes by and this pilot comes out, and guess what? Guess how many of the opponents were on?
0.
Well, I was on, and then I was on for maybe like a minute or 2 out of the 1 hour. And then someone else was also on briefly, but mostly it was all the proponents, like the people for the theory, because it's such a great theory, and it's so compelling. And by the way, the people for it were so great at speaking. They were like made for the camera, made for speaking. Yeah. And then the people against it were more like robotic and very conservative and really, serious. So it kind of made sense for entertainment. So then the pilot was so successful, or maybe they'd already planned like the first series. So I was on it for a while, but then what I noticed was they would take what I said and made it sound like I agreed with the theory. So they would say, tell us about this wouldn't be on the show, but they would, to prompt me, they'd say, tell us about the spaceship that might be hiding out near Earth. So I would say, well, there's this special balance point where people wanted to think there was a spacecraft, but there's definitely not one there. But they would cut out that second part. So they would just have me explaining it without saying, but there's definitely not one there.
Wasn't that something that would come every like 21 years or something
okay,
like that?
I don't know about that.
No.
But let me finish the story. So eventually I decided, my colleagues would say, I saw you on Ancient Aliens. I'm like, why were you on that? And then the only thing I could think of to say is like, well, why were you watching it? So then eventually I had to not be on it, but I tried one more time and I had to speak as fast as possible so they couldn't cut my sentence in half, and they still cut it in half. And so I just said, I can't be on it anymore. And recently I got asked to be on it again because, there's been a lot of turnover, and I just said no. So if you ever see me on it, I'm super young. And because, you sign a form saying they own like whatever you said forever, I'm like permanently young on the show. So that's like the one good thing to come out of it is if you see that, it's like me, 15 years ago or something.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
It's sad that they did that though. You're not really,
because the idea of like showing the theory and how compelling it is, but then showing some reason, it's sort of such a great idea in a way, to like just put it all out there. But it kind of got away from itself, right? It became like very entertaining and
yeah.
But let's come back to. I did want to come back to Venus for a moment.
Absolutely.
That's like our own crazy theory right here in planetary science. And so you asked, like, are we going to Venus? How can we go back? Well, all of a sudden, after people trying to get missions to go to Venus, NASA is sending 2 missions to Venus later this decade, at the end of this decade, and the European Space Agency also have planned to send one back. And this is amazing because they're going to do a lot of good research, but none of them are investigating the clouds. None of them are, one of them's dropping down into the atmosphere, but they're not studying the clouds and looking for signs of life. Perhaps it's too taboo, like it's too out there for them, but that's not on the plan either.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Is there anything we could do? We got to write NASA?
Well, so what I've been doing for the last while is I've been spearheading a study, like a concept study of how can we go to Venus in a very focused way, a series of missions that can look for signs of life and study the clouds itself. And I'm really proud to tell you that our first mission is targeted for launch in May of 2023. That
really?
is like, yeah. And this is mostly, actually, this whole mission is spearheaded by Rocket Lab. They're a company that sends up commercial rockets, and they want to go to Venus. So I'm bringing the science team and the science instrument to the project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, well, we got to get you back on and check in and see how this project is going. That is incredible. Hopefully, I go ahead.
We hope it's one of a few missions. Like we literally have it all planned out, and I'll send you like a link. I don't expect you to read like the 150 pages, but we've wrote down a plan of like how to get this job done in the next few years. And if everything went amazingly well, the final step, like if everything checked out and it looks, wow, there are these weird gases that don't belong. We see, if we can find rich, like organic material in the cloud droplets, if we can kind of get a series of steps done, our dream would be to bring a sample back to Earth so we can study it properly and even like look for signs of little microbes.
Oh yeah. Then, and you know what? You could be the first person that answers that question. Are we alone? Which would be incredible. Scientific, in your face, undisputable data. Here we go. And then I would be proven right, and millions of others. But we're all crazy people. But that would be amazing. This is very exciting. I didn't know that. That is so cool. Wow. Is there anything else like how big is the team? That's the scientific team. How many members?
Right now, I'd say it's about 10 people right now.
Okay.
It's a pretty small team. And this mission, it's a first mission. It's a very short mission. The instrument is very lightweight. Like this instrument is less than a kilogram. And the mission will be dropping a probe to go down through the atmosphere very quickly. It'll only be able to spend this first mission a few minutes in the clouds.
Okay.
And we'll be like shining a light, like a laser out of a window. And we'll be measuring the backscattered light. And if we can measure that backscattered light and like the angles that it goes into, and we measure this thing called polarization, we can tell something about the particles. And what we're also doing is we're shining a light to try to fluoresce the particles. Like as an analogy, do you ever go in like a fun house if you were a kid, or maybe like a nightclub where they have this fluorescent light, and so some of your clothes like light up in a weird way?
Yeah.
I don't know if this exactly. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So we're trying to do that. We're shining a laser of a specific ultraviolet wavelength out at these particles. And if we can get them to fluoresce, like to light up in that weird way, it means that these droplets aren't pure concentrated sulfuric acid. It means that they have something else inside. And things that fluoresce, organic molecules fluoresce, molecules that like life needs, and that life might even, use or be built from. So we're trying to sort of get away from this picture that Venus is like a sterile planet, but instead that these droplets, they're not just this, nasty substance, but there's a richer thing going on inside. And there's evidence for that. That's why we're doing this. But that's kind of the science we're trying to get back, is what are these cloud particles really?
If this ends up being productive and these things show that there's something else inside the droplets, doesn't that kind of open up Pandora's box as far as like the versatility of life, right? Like that, I think that would open people's minds to start looking in a lot of different places. So this is very important.
Yeah, I'm glad you support it. Thank you.
No, 100%. It's you're thinking outside of the box. You're not. I honestly think the way that you're approaching the search for life on other planets is probably the best way, because the chances of finding intelligent life or something that is just as smart as us, if not smarter, is infinitesimally small. But the probability of finding microbes and things that are early in their stages, something really, really small, makes a lot more sense. And I definitely support this, and I definitely love the ingenuity and the creativity that you're showing in studying this. It's amazing. It's good to get this perspective, because it's not as far-fetched and as crazy as I like to think. It's a very, very rigid and a very thoughtful approach to search for extraterrestrial life and actually finding proof and gathering the data. And it's very important that there are people like you that are alive. I think it's amazing. I'm very impressed, and I mean, yeah, wow, I'm blown away. This is awesome. Is there I want to be respectful of your time, and we're kind of running short.
Right. Well, before we wrap up, and of course this doesn't really have to be in the show, but I'd love to hear just really briefly about your hiking. Just something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
About what you do out there.
I won't leave this in the show. I hike, me and my girlfriend are avid hikers. We hike all over the place. We go to the Columbia River Gorge, and I'll shoot you some pictures as well.
Sure.
Mount Hood, we hike the coast. We hike everything. In this state, there's a lot of hiking available. Yeah, Oregon, exactly. Yeah,
we have because of the pandemic, partly, my teenagers and I started hiking. Because remember how when everything shut down, there really wasn't much to do. So we kind of worked our way. And then one summer we went to Idaho for a couple of weeks. There's some spectacular things in Idaho. And then the next summer, we just sort of pick a state we don't know anything about, rent a car and drive around. We picked Oregon, and we hiked up South Sister. That was like our big hike.
Yeah.
Because that's like the only supposedly non-technical like cascade. I don't know if that's true, but that's kind of what So we managed to hike that, and we had this incredible view. We saw like several, like 5 or 6. We could see all the way to Mount Rainier. It was just a smudge, but it was just a spectacular view.
Yeah. Next time did you end up going to Bend when you were out there?
I don't think we spent time there. We tried but I think we might have driven close to there.
Okay. Yeah. Next time, be sure to visit. And if you're ever out in Oregon again, let me know. I'd love to grab dinner with you and your family.
It's great to hear that you love hiking. It's so great out there.
It's incredible. Yeah, you got to take advantage of what's in your backyard.
Yeah, when we flew to Portland, we were like this close from Mount Hood. Like it was like right outside our. Have you seen that? It's like right outside your window. It's like, what is that? It's
yeah, it's massive. And we this last summer we went on a overnight backpacking trip in the Three Sisters Wilderness. It's something you have to draw a permit for that, and then
you have to get a permit to hike up South Sister as well. Now it's new apparently.
Yeah, it is new, and the reason they did that is there's just a lot in these forests. There's a lot of people that are into hiking, and if you have to pay for it, it raises the barriers to entry, and it's a better way of preserving, and also the money goes to keep the forest pristine. So,
and I think they want to limit the number of people per day because we only found this out like one day before we had to get the permit, because you have to get the permit 1 week before.
Oh, wow.
And we only learned about this like 8 days before, but I woke up really early and like I kept hitting refresh so I could grab there's still a lot of people. It was still quite crowded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the new thing that they instituted a few years ago. So
the only thing though is, as a hiker, that you want to have some flexibility, right? Because there might be really bad weather or it doesn't work out, but that doesn't allow flexibility somehow, right? Because if you have to go like that day,
yeah, that's true. Well, I'm thrilled that you're into hiking. So that's cool. You got any other hobbies?
Let's see. Not really. So I'm one of those people who's like ultra focused on what I do. And my kids are grown up now though. So I think it's time to find some hobbies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I get that. But I mean, it's like I said, people such as yourself are incredibly important for our civilization. You're moving us forward. And, this has been a blast. Keep up the hard work, and we're definitely going to have you on, and we'll continue to communicate. And any new developments or anything, please let us know. Thank you so much for doing this. Do you have any social media, any books, or anything you'd want to promote?
Sure, I do have a book. It is called The Smallest Lights in the Universe. And this book is actually a memoir, which it actually talks about the exploration of outer space, like space and the search for planets and life. And it also goes through, as a memoir, my journey of inner space. We're all searching for something. And so it tries to kind of capture that journey. Okay,
definitely. We'll put the link to the book in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you on again, and this has been great.
It's so great meeting you. I'm really glad that I got to meet you, and it's been really great chatting with you.
Thank you. Well, folks, that's all we got. Be sure to buy that book. Thank you so much for listening. Please leave us 5 stars on iTunes, and be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's right. We're still there, folks, posting videos. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.